Today we're going over the different types of police academies and some nuances that you may see throughout different types of academies or in your particular academy. Let's discuss. Before we get started, we have two gifts in the description for you. First is the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process. Plus, there's some hidden bonuses in there I think you're going to like. Additionally, is a coaching call with any member of our team or even myself if you'd like, where we can jump in, go over anything about your police hiring process, your academy, anything you might want to know to kick off your law enforcement career. Now, the different types of police academies. Most people wouldn't think there's that much of a difference between a police academy. However, when you really dive into it, you can see there's different types of nuances. You could have anything from a part-time academy where you show up on the weekends and in the evening hours, all the way up to a live-in academy where you actually live on campus. You eat, sleep, and breathe the academy for 5, 6, 7, 8 months, whatever length the academy is. And that just goes into show you the different lengths that academies can have as well. But there's a bunch of different nuances. We're going to kick it off at the top, and that's going to be with what most people think about with their typical local law enforcement. That's municipality academies and municipality law enforcement. There we go. So if you're looking at a municipality, a town, a city, or a smaller city or town, most likely you're going to have what's called a municipality law enforcement academy. Now, here's the interesting part about it is the department or the town needs to have enough revenue to be able to afford an academy, because an academy is not cheap to run, with staffing, with benefits for their employees, and with all the gear that's needed to run the academy. A lot of it goes into it. So the municipality needs to be of a larger size, but not so big that it's its own what we call in-house academy, right? So it's a small, minute detail, but it makes up the difference there. So a municipality academy, like I said, cities, towns, focus on mostly that local agency's needs. They teach a lot of things that pertain specifically to that agency, and it really deep dives into it. You don't see a lot of municipality academies out there, but it is kind of a bridge, or I would say municipality and in-house academies can be sometimes considered the same thing. Take LAPD, for example. They have their own academy, right? But LAPD is a very large city. So what happens, or large department. So what happens is you apply to the academy, you get accepted into the academy, you go through training, and then they assign you districts, or however they break it up from there, to where you're going to be stationed pretty much. But in-house and municipality academies can sometimes either be identical or resemble the same. The next is a regional academy. So a regional academy is an academy sponsored usually by the state or by a collective group of government, so different counties, things like that. And that's where anyone in that local region or that area that is applying to departments in those regions will go. So how to kind of break this down is, say you have a bunch of different county departments, whether it's county sheriffs or actually county police departments, and they all will go to the same academy, right? They all have, memorandums of understanding and signed agreements that all the officers from these departments go to this academy. They all help fund the academy. And in that academy, you're going to probably see officers from different regions or different counties or geographic areas that are somewhat close together, not completely spread out, but not completely the exact same either. We'll dive into a little bit more detail on these here in a little bit, but the big thing here is just understand is you probably aren't just going to be going to a academy of just your department. So this is an academy where it will just be you and other officers from different departments that are all sponsors of that specific academy. Next is state academies, and this is the state police. A lot of times state police will have their own police academy, right? They focus solely on their roles and responsibilities. I mean, they get overall general law enforcement training, but they focus a lot on state police type of patrol, highway patrol, different state level enforcement aspects, and you most likely, outside of advanced training for other local law enforcement, you will not run into any other members, specifically in your basic training, where they're not a state police officer. There's reason to believe that you will at some point work with these individuals, or at least you all are going to be working for the same agency at that time. And a lot of times, depending on how large your state is, you could work with someone in the academy, but they could be stationed at a completely different side of the state. So you could, depending on how large your state is, they could be at one tip, you could be at the other tip, or doesn't matter. But sometimes you'll run into these individuals, sometimes you'll be assigned the same post, sometimes you won't, but there is a collective organization just for state police. Next is your federal academies. So the big federal academy that trains most of federal law enforcement is called Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. That's where I'm an alumni of. That one is host for a lot of uniform, a lot of even special agents, depending on which branch. Then you have other federal academies such as the FBI and the DEA. They tend to have their own in-house, so to say. They're a federal law enforcement academy, but they're also an in-house academy. They train their own people. So it is, like I said, you can kind of blend some of these, but covers a grand scale. So federally, you have some bigger ones out in Georgia. You have some bigger ones in New Mexico, some smaller ones in Maryland, and then South Carolina. Just some other locations where there might be some need for joint training for different federal law enforcement. Then you have your individual federal agencies that might have their own small type of academy for add-on training, right? Take Secret Service or something like that. They have additional training and academies, not for basic, but for in-house training on certain other avenues. So there's a lot there. Now, federal academies, if you're going state or local, just so you know, if you can get your department to cover cost of travel and room and board, a lot of add-on training through FLETC for local and state is actually cost effective. It's free, right? So as long as you can cover room and board and travel, usually you can get sent to some training down there for state and local and at no additional cost for the actual training. Some things like that may change as time goes by, but just keep that in mind. It's a good one. The other one we have is university-based academies. And this is, I know it says university-based, but think more your community colleges that have their own academies, right? So some states allow individuals to self-sponsor, right? Which means that you can pay money, and it's really hard to work at this time unless you're doing that part-time academy that I was mentioning earlier. So where you can go in, you can do your academy and you pay for it, and then you get your post certification or whatever that state deems it, right? Your police officer certification, and you can then take that, and then you're just kind of a higher level tier for an applicant, right? If I was going to break it off for tier wise, you have in-state laterals for applicant ranking, in-state laterals, out-of-state laterals if that state allows out-of-state laterals. Then you have academy graduates, individuals who have no law enforcement experience but have self-sponsored through the academies. Then you have new recruits. Now, I'm an avid individual, right? And we are over here where we say, hey, we'd rather you get sponsored to go through the academy because we want you to focus on the academy, not have to worry about finances and paying bills while still paying to go through the academy, and you can't work. And if you fail the academy, it just makes it harder to become a police officer down the line. So understand that just because that's the rank structure, there are departments out there, and a majority of departments actually, that sponsor you, right? That will, depending on your state, some states not so much, but there are, majority of the time, you will apply to a new recruit or a cadet or a new trainee or whatever the title is for finding these positions, and you will be able to go through and get paid as a police officer, right, or a police trainee, and then you work for that department. You start your benefits, you start sometimes, if you're lucky, you start your probationary period or your time towards permanent status, all while you're in the academy as well. Sometimes not, but usually you do. So you'll go through and you're actually an employee of that agency or that county or that city or that state agency, whatever it is. And that's the way I recommend it, because then you're solely focused on developing your career, passing and succeeding and learning so that you can go out there and serve the community properly, right? The big thing though is to make sure that just because you're hired in doesn't mean that you're going through the academy that you're golden, right? If you fail the academy, or if you get hurt, or if you get in any sort of trouble, you're still in what's considered that conditional probationary status, and they can remove you, and there's not much you can do to argue it as an employee with a law enforcement agency. But a lot of times these community college will even work as regional academies too. So not every department has access to their own, so to say, independent academy. A lot of times they will partner with these university-based or community-based colleges that have academies. And that's actually the first academy that I went through, was with a seasonal law enforcement program for the National Park Service, because that's how you have to do it. And that worked out really well for me. And then the next one I went through is I had to get sponsored through by an actual law enforcement. So I had to lateral over / new hire over, get picked up with another department, and then they sponsored to put me through, and it was way better because I was getting paid. But yeah, it can be complicated. Now, the one thing I will say about academies is they can all be a little bit different. Some of them are super paramilitary structured. A lot of them will start off with a really rough week 1 or week 2, where it's a lot of physical beatdowns, a lot of yelling in your face. And the whole reason is not to teach you to do that to the community, because that's not what it's for. Matter of fact, the community can do that to you, and you need to just be okay with it, because that's their freedoms, right? As long as they're not posing any type of threat, you're fine. But the big aspect is for you, when you're going through the academy, they're trying to see your mental toughness and whether or not you can handle those type of stressors, whether someone's yelling at you, whether you're fatigued and tired, because giving up, it can mean serious injury and or death, right, out there on the street. So they want to make sure that an individual is mentally prepared to go through the rigors of the profession. And one way that they know to do this is to be really, really kind of overt, yelling at you, kind of getting in your face. Doesn't mean that that's, like I said, that's the way you behave outside of it. That's just, they're trying to see, can you handle that mental strain? Have you ever been put into a situation like that where you're getting, just ripped apart, verbally, physically, you're at your max of what you thought you could take, and then you go past it, right? And make no mistake, you can make it. If you survive week 1 or week 2 of a police academy like that, you're doing pretty good. After that, now the big thing is making sure that you succeed in all your operational stuff, all your academics, all your fitness, everything. What I would say with those type of departments is just make sure that you're going in as prepared as possible, right? They're going to find reasons to have someone mess up, and those reasons are specifically just so that they can have an excuse to do a physical beatdown or whatever it is, whatever they have to do, because they want to keep testing you. They want to keep pushing your limits so that you can keep seeing, hey, I can take more than I thought I could. All right, so keep that in mind, and you can. I have complete faith in you. Now, you have other academies that focus more on the type of, individual development, where they say, hey, you're required to be here at this time. Yeah, while you're in the group setting, you have to follow the group. If they require you to march, or you be in formation or whatever it is. But while you're there, they don't push the paramilitary aspect as much. They're focusing on individual development of each candidate, where that is, hey, yes, you have to operate as a team, but at the same point in time, a lot of it's going to be testing you as an individual. Single patrol, sometimes they'll do partner patrols to see how you work with cover and contact officer positions, but a lot of times it's individual assessment. So a lot of everything rides on your own individual accomplishments and not so much as the team environment, because sometimes you're just going to be out there on a single person patrol and backup might not be readily available. Now, they don't forego the teamwork aspect. I'm not saying that, but they do focus on you as an individual, and can you pass your shooting quals? Can you pass your police scenario operations? Can you pass your use of force training? Can you pass your academics training? And it's not going to be any type of, hey, yeah, so and so didn't no. It's all on you. If your team fails or something like that, you're still being assessed individually. One aspect of that is an academy where you don't stay on campus. You have to show up on time every morning and get there, and they're going to evaluate you as a team as well, but they're mostly looking to evaluate you, as an individual. So just kind of keep that in mind. There's a little bit of a difference between every academy out there. Some instructors, and you're always going to have instructors that are really hard on you, that are really loud. They're there intentionally. Just know that. All right? That's their job, is to mentally push you. Right? Then you have other instructors that are there to academically push you. Then you have other instructors there that are there to physically push you. And that is the whole purpose, so that you can learn and grow, so that you can go out there and best represent the community that you're supposed to be protecting. I will say this. I tend to see with community college ones, it's a little bit more of an independent. However, they do have some instructors that are focused on pushing those limits of individuals. But a lot of times those community college ones are, you might have a mix. You might have sponsored and self-sponsored in there. So and it could be for people for departments all over, or for no department. So to teach, hey, this is how this department does it, doesn't really work. So they teach a more broader approach to just the state level for that state that academy or that college is in. So just kind of keep that in mind. The other aspect I would say when it comes to academies is just understand that each academy is going to focus on different aspects throughout. You'll have your driving phase, you'll have your scenario phases, and then you got to test out in your scenario phases. You have your academic phases, and that runs throughout the entire time, and the entire time you're learning. Focus on learning. Don't just focus on passing. One of the biggest things is focusing on learning, because you're going to need to apply these skills later on, and it's really hard to apply these skills if you go out with your FTO, your field training officer, and they say, hey, what would you do in this situation? And that was one of the days in the academy maybe that you were, having an off day. I get that, but if you miss something, try to go back and make sure that you understand it, because at some point in time they will. And this is just the basics, right? Your academy is just the basics. That's why you still have field training after. You might have some add-on training afterwards. You need to understand that just because you pass basic, there's still a lot more to learn once you get out there, so that you can best serve the community, right? That's one aspect that I really want to hit home. All right. A lot of different types of academies. There's so much more to it than this. There's significantly more to it when you go in. But these are the different type of academies out there. Once again, you have your municipalities, which are usually for specific towns, specific cities. You have your regionals that have a collective organization of different participating agencies. You have your state academies, which are your state level law enforcement officers. Federal academies, which once again cover pretty much all federal law enforcement, unless they have their specific own academy, like FBI, DEA, something like that. You have your university or community college based academies where you can go in. Some of them, depending on the state, even allow you to self-sponsor to put yourself through to make yourself a more sought after candidate. And then you have in-house academies, which could be, mixed in with such as the FBI Academy or a certain municipality or town academies. So hope this helps. There's so much more to this. We'll add to this as we go through, but this is the basics of understanding the different types of academies out there, a little bit to what's involved in them. I hope this helps. Remember, those gifts are in the description below the Getting Started workshop, and call with any member of my team or even myself. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.